God sent food to the villagers, helping them through a crisis where they nearly starved to death. But the villagers complained that the food was not enough. Incredibly, the god in the sky was killed by an arrow. It turned out that in those impoverished and desperate times, locusts had ravaged the land, indirectly causing many villagers to starve. As humanity was on the brink of extinction, the village chief, with his last hope, knelt down and prayed devoutly for the god to help them through this ordeal. At that moment, a kind god sensed the chief's plea and used divine power to provide food. The chief, without wasting a moment, rushed home, cut the food into small pieces, and distributed it to the nearby villagers. But the food was far from enough to satisfy everyone. So, the next day, the chief organized a large group of villagers to kneel and pray again. However, the amount of food they received was the same as before, even though the number of villagers seeking food had doubled. Thinking that his prayers were not devout enough, the chief, on the third day, used the limited resources he had to build an altar. He led even more people to worship, but the gods still provided the same fixed amount of food. As more and more villagers came to share the food, the chief wore a strange smile. On the fourth day, the chief began to worship again. When the god appeared, the chief suddenly took out the bow and arrow he had prepared and struck the god's weak spot. Then he chopped off the god's arm, which was transformed into a machine that could produce food at will. Now the villagers only needed to place the food on the conveyor belt, and those outside would receive a portion of processed food. But to everyone's surprise, the chief began to charge fees. Streams of money poured down the conveyor belt into the chief's home. He sat in the palace he had built with his own hands and laughed loudly. But he didn't know that a disaster was about to happen. A bolt of lightning appeared in the dark, stormy sky and destroyed everything around. And the god's arm, which they had exploited, began to twist and move. Suddenly, the dead god came back to life. Faced with these humans, the god decided not to forgive them and used lightning to slaughter the villagers. The world became like a living hell. The chief, seeing the scene before him, finally felt regret, but it was too late to make amends. In the end, the chief was swallowed by the god. So, do you think it was the greedy human nature that was wrong, or was it the kind God who made a mistake?